Okay, remember that they're changing my voice and they're fuming and poisoning me because all the churches, mosques, and synagogues are wrong and I'm right, and they're very jealous, and the governing class is very immature, as I'm sure you've noticed. This video is about Ezekiel 36, hope for the mountains of Israel. Son of man, prophesy to the mountains of Israel and say, Mountains of Israel, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says. The enemy said of you, Aha, the ancient heights have become our possession. Therefore prophesy and say, This is what the sovereign Lord says. Because they ravaged and crushed you from every side, so that you became the possession of the rest of the nations, and the object of people's malicious talk and slander. Therefore, mountains of Israel, hear the word of the sovereign Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says to the mountains and hills, to the ravines and valleys, to the desolate ruins and the deserted towns that have been plundered and ridiculed by the rest of the nations around you. This is what the sovereign Lord says. In my burning zeal, I have spoken against the rest of the nations, and against all Edom, for with glee and with malice in their hearts they made my land their own possession, so that they might plunder its pasture land. Therefore prophesy concerning the land of Israel, and say to the mountains and hills, to the ravines and valleys, This is what the sovereign Lord says. I speak in my jealous wrath because you have suffered the scorn of the nations. Therefore this is what the sovereign Lord says. I swear with uplifted hand that the nations around you will also suffer scorn. But you, mountains of Israel, will produce branches and fruit for my people Israel, for they will soon come home. I am concerned for you, and will look on you with favor. You will be plowed and sown. And I will cause many people to live on you. Yes, all of Israel, the towns will be inhabited, and the ruins rebuilt. I will increase the number of people and animals living on you, and they will be fruitful and become numerous. I will settle people on you as in the past, and will make you prosper more than before. Then you will know that I am the Lord. Okay, I'm going to explain this in a second. Let me just read a few more verses here. I will cause my people Israel, to live on you. They will possess you, and you will be their inheritance. You will never again deprive them of their children. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Because some say to you, You devour people and deprive your nation of its children. Therefore you will no longer devour people or make your nation childless, declares the sovereign Lord. No longer will I make you hear the taunts of the nations, and no longer will you suffer the scorn of the peoples or cause your nation to fall, declares the sovereign Lord. So again, verse 15 is key here. No longer will I make you hear the taunts of the nations, and no longer will you suffer the scorn of the peoples or cause your nation to fall, declares the sovereign Lord. So it's talking about what happens in the afterlife. Keep in mind that a very important part of Ezekiel is kind of hidden in Ezekiel 14, but it kind of goes without saying. When you interpret things wrong, you go to hell, and you're an example, a byword, an object of scorn, a disgrace, what have you. Ezekiel 14:4, Therefore speak to them and tell them, This is what the sovereign Lord says. When any of the Israelites set up idols in their hearts and put a wicked stumbling block before their faces, and then go to a prophet, I, the Lord, will answer them myself in keeping with their great idolatry. It says in Psalms, right, to the devious you show yourself shrewd. To the faithful you show yourself faithful. To the devious you show yourself shrewd. I've been saying this for years before I zoomed in on Ezekiel 14. I used to cite Psalm as my proof of that. I said, look, these people are being led along. Like in Isaiah 30:30, right? Their sin has caused them to be a slave to sin, and they're being put on paths that people who sin go on, and they're going to be surprised at their ending to some degree, because they're trying to convince themselves that everyone's doing it, so on and so forth, and they're objects of scorn, right? Why do you think the governing class and lots of people refer to the masses of people as sheeple? People who are evil themselves are most the people who refer to people as sheeple, but the people are sheeple. Not in a good way. They're dumb farm animals. They're the objects of scorn. They're not the sheep of God. They're just mark of the beast, dumb sheep. They're goats. When you look at it spiritually speaking, in the language of Matthew 25, I believe it is, right? Separating the sheep from the goats. They are goats. They go at stupid, and they go to hell. So when it says that God swears with an uplifted hand that the nations around them will also suffer scorn. But those who are faithful to God, right, those who accept the divine conveyance of God. So how do we know the divine conveyance of God is associated with the mountains? Where Moses went up to the mountain, right, and there's a lot of religious mountains. There's Sinai, there's Horeb, Mount Zion, and he received the 10 commandments, right, the mountains of Israel, right, plural. Horeb is the play on words for Behor. Hor is an ancient word for Horus. Hor, right? Horus or horror. And horror relative to being a whore. Now, there's a lot of people who act like psychopaths. They think that the answer is to be, Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees in the horror movie. They chose to be a punk and not obey God, and they think they can weather the storm. And that's what Isaiah's talking about. It says, your covenant with the realm of the dead will fail you. You will have regrets, then you'll go to hell. So everyone who cheats me out of my right to lead is full of regrets, and they're in denial, and they look so stupid. Some are giddy idiots like Bezos and Musk, and some of them are just complete monsters. So when we look at verses 12 through 15, what happens to their children? Okay, I'm not saying this to kind of make fun of them or something, or just kick them while they're down. Okay, I'm telling people what the situation is and what they need to do before it's too late. And even after I'm gone, people should know what's happened here. I will cause my people Israel to live on you. They will possess you, and you will be their inheritance. You will never again deprive them of their children. Okay? So they're being deprived of their children, but how first and foremost? Because a lot of these people keep reproducing when their enemies rule over them. As their slaves, what have you. Spiritually speaking, right? The mountains of Israel represent the conveyance point. The king, the mountain, the prophet of God and his spirit coming through that person into the world. And there was a bunch of jealous Jews who were saying, no, we don't believe who you are. We don't believe that you are who you say you are. Like in John 10, they said, why should we believe you? There's a bunch of Pharisees who said, no, it's us and our special committees that rule over the people. And it's King Herod and da-da-da. And they're saying all this nonsense. But Christ said, look, you're wrong. I'm the one this warrior God set apart as his very own. So he said, unless I do the work of the Father, don't believe me. And in verses 12 through 15 here, you see that it says that they're eating their own children's souls, right? Cronus, they worship Cronus, right? A deity of eating their own children's life worth and souls and future hopes, right? And so they're being deprived of their future, the children are being deprived of their future hopes, so they're being devoured. This is what the sovereign Lord says, because some say to you, you devour people and deprive your nation of its children, therefore you'll no longer devour people or make your nation childless. We said in Galatians 4 as well, as when it defines the difference between flesh-based children and children with souls and spiritual works, what have you. Right? Wisdom is proven right by her deeds, it says in the New Testament, also by her children. In that sort of way, that sort of meaning of children, right? Bearing fruit. No longer will I make you hear the taunts of the nations, and no longer will you suffer the scorn of the peoples, or cause your nation to fall, declares the sovereign Lord. Now it is not talking about Israel in this world. Galatians 4 makes that clear as well. It's talking about when the righteous leave this world. Anyone who thinks I'm wrong about that, read Galatians 4 many times, take notes, and in your notes highlight things and underline things. Make sure that you understand what it's saying. It's saying it's saying Israel in this world, Jerusalem in this world is lost in sin. That's why heaven and earth will pass away. My words will not pass away. The spirit of the words, the word as the spirit of God, the actions of God, the divine order of God, what have you. So let's move on here. I'm running out of time. Israel's restoration assured. Again, the word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, when the people of Israel were living in their own land, they defiled it by their conduct and their actions. Their conduct was like a woman's monthly uncleanness in my sight. So I poured out my wrath on them because they had shed blood in the land and because they had defiled it with their idols. So they're acting like punks. They're acting like the B word on their period. Okay? They were acting like sissies throwing a fit, just like the governing class is now. When they're ordering people to persecute me, they're acting like some kind of sissy that it doesn't have discipline. It doesn't have moral conviction, doesn't have moral will. Okay, they're failing because they don't have moral will, moral conviction, moral clarity, moral intensity, moral precision, you name it. They don't have the life and martial art principles in their true form, these monotheistic martial art principles, intact. So I poured out my wrath on them because they had shed blood in the land, because they had defiled it with their idols. They caused them to act like punks. Like we see the masses of people, jocks, nerds, thugs with no higher cause, corporate people, okay, emos, rockers, you name it. They're all acting like punks. Okay, virtue means man. They refuse to be virtuous. And this has to be highlighted because it's the right thing to do. There's lots of groups that don't want me to mention their group, but I have to help people understand what's going on here. Okay. I dispersed them among the nations, and they were scattered through the countries. I judged them according to their conduct and their actions. So when they're getting punished, right, they're being scattered instead of coming into a spiritual formation to worship God. So it becomes harder for them. This part is key here when you people ask me, well, how is it that this person here is guilty when they don't even know what's going on? Because them and their ancestors were scattered. This was a common theme in ancient religions, because when people go to war, they scatter the other people, right? They flee, they're dispersed, they're displaced, right? And they're assimilated to some degree. And to some degree, they run away. And therefore, they lose their kind of spiritual formation, their warrior formation, their spiritual formation, what have you. So they're scattered. Now, there's a difference between that and being a pagan, like these white people in their churches, for example. They're just pagans. And for them to try to defend their culture and their interpretation of the Bible is just another pagan, race-based group trying to defend their pagan race-based group culture. They're better off being scattered, so to speak, right? They're not in the Spirit of God. So God is punishing them by separating them from the ability to come together and obey God through me. And then they go to hell. So there's these obstacles before them. There's these stumbling blocks before them, including what their heart desires, including what they think. And they have to overcome them. Like life is like an obstacle course that has been made harder because of people's generational guilt. Okay. So I dispersed them among the nations, and they were scattered through the countries. I judged them according to their conduct and their actions. And wherever they went among the nations, they profaned my holy name, for it was said of them, these are the Lord's people, and yet they had to leave his land. I had concern for my holy name, which the people of Israel profaned among the nations where they had gone. I can't stress this enough. This is extremely important. They're not talking about the land in Israel. They're talking about how these people did not come together in a divine formation, okay, living spiritually in the land of God, whether they were in the flesh or not, whether they're in Israel or not. Okay, they had left that land, so they were profaning it, right? They were faking being chosen by God instead of actually being in the divine order, in a formation at the rally point, the real alpha point, and serving God. I had concern for my holy name, which the people of Israel profaned among the nations where they had gone. Therefore say to the Israelites, this is what the sovereign Lord says. It is not for your sake, people of Israel, that I am going to do these things, but for the sake of my holy name, which you profaned among the nations, the name you profaned among them. The nations will know that I am the Lord, declares the sovereign Lord, when I am proved holy through you before their eyes. So he's saying it's not for their sake. The Bible is not about the Jewish people. Again, the Bible is not about the Jewish people. Everyone write down Ezekiel 36, verse 22. It's saying that all these people who act like it is, they're wrong. They are not chosen. Okay? They don't understand what it means to be a chosen people of God or to be chosen. Again, no offense other than the offense that God intended. I have to clarify this. That's the right thing to do. So in verse 22, again, it says, therefore say to the Israelites, this is what the sovereign Lord says, it is not for your sake, people of Israel, that I'm going to do these things, but for the sake of my holy name, which you have profaned among the nations where you have gone. As they continue to cheat me out of my right to lead and profane the name, okay, they and the rest of the world will be cut off from God after my flesh dies. That's what it's saying here. I will show the holiness of my great name, which has been profaned among the nations, the name you have profaned among them. The nations will know that I am the Lord, declares the sovereign Lord, when I am proved holy through you before their eyes. Through who? Okay, Galatians 3:28, there's no Jew or Gentile. Those who obey the commands of God are the family of Christ. So through those who obey the commands of God in the divine order, right? Proverbs 16:12, the throne is established in righteousness. New Living Translation, justice. When people say no kings, they're saying that they don't want God's chosen to establish the earth in righteousness and justice. And they're not the only ones saying. The MAGA in their own way, the whole world is saying it in their own way except for me. And my parents are blameless. So they're being cut off from God. Them and their offspring. Again, the scattering is a punishment. And their offspring are being scattered to the point where they can never return. They're being cut off, being blocked out. The word law is a play on words for wall. They're being sealed in. The 7 seals, the seal in Zechariah, etc. For I will take you out of the nations. I will gather you from all the countries and bring you back into your own land. And that includes the nation of Israel, right? The nation of Israel at the time, was occupied by somebody else, right? They were scattered throughout the world. Okay, they're being taken into captivity. Okay, maybe not at the time in this chapter right here, but during Babylonian captivity, right? So during Babylon, it's occupied by someone else. Why would they take them out of that place and put them in somewhere that's occupied? And why would they take them out of that place or out of America or Europe and have them establish Israel in Babylonian social norms? Zionism, as defined by them, is Babylonian social norms. So they're still in Babylonian captivity where it matters most. And I am the way, the truth, and the life. They cannot establish themselves. They have to obey God through me, and no one should reproduce no matter what have you. Okay. So, for I will take you out of the nations, I will gather you from all the countries and bring you back into your own land. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all your impurities and from all your idols. And we know that water stands for righteousness, well-being, the Holy Spirit of God. In the Lord's hand, the king's heart is the stream of water that he channels to all who please him, and therefore they have to obey God through me, or else they're in rebellion. And rebellion is like the sin of divination, and idolatry is what it says in 1 Samuel, and so on and so forth. In rebellion against God and the one he set apart, right? Proverbs 24:21, fear the Lord and the king, my son, and do not join with rebellious officials, etc. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. We don't see that in Israel. We see that they're in the kind of oppressive Israeli culture. Some of them from America, some from Europe, some from Ethiopia. They're from places that are merely profane nations, and they bring that mentality with them, and it mixes with the oppressive Israeli mentality in Israel, and they don't have a heart that has the Spirit of God in it, right? A lot of them are gays, feminists. They don't agree on translations. They're all over the place, right? They're scattered. They're scattered even in the nation of Israel. They're spiritually and mentally scattered from each other. They're distant, and they're certainly distant from God. And that is evidence that they're distant from God. And I will put my spirit in you and move you to follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws. Then you will live in the land I gave your ancestors. You will be my people, and I will be your God. I will save you from all your uncleanness. I will call for the grain and make it plentiful, and will not bring famine upon you. I will increase the fruit of the trees and the crops of the field, so that you will no longer suffer disgrace among the nations because of famine. And they're talking about spiritual famine. Then you will remember your evil ways and wicked deeds, and you will loathe yourselves for your sins and your detestable practices. Notice it says that they will loathe themselves. So if you're a righteous man looking at the rest of the world's sin, just like it says in Psalms where David says, I look at these rebels, with loathing, right? Because they do not obey your word. Okay, that's how you expect someone to feel. So all these people saying that you're not supposed to feel a sort of righteous hate, for lack of a better word, because they blur the line between hate and righteous indignation, they're wrong. I want you to know that I am not doing this for your sake, declares the sovereign Lord. Be ashamed and disgraced for your conduct, people of Israel. And of course, first remove the log from your own eye so you can see clearly. Everyone else but me who feels hatred, they're all just hypocrites and sinners hating other sinners. But there's a spectrum of failure to be considered as well. This is what the sovereign Lord says. On the day I cleanse you from all your sins, I will resettle your towns, and the ruins will be rebuilt. The desolate land will be cultivated instead of lying desolate in the sight of all who pass through it. Then the nations around you that remain will know that I, the Lord, have rebuilt what was destroyed and have replanted what was desolate. I, the Lord, have spoken, and I will do it. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Once again, I will yield to Israel's plea and do this for them. I will make their people as numerous as sheep, as numerous as the flocks for offering at Jerusalem during her appointed festivals. So will the ruined cities be filled with the flocks of people. Notice it says the flocks of people. Then they will know that I'm the Lord. Now, look at it like this here. A lot of people don't get this here. And this is part of why I don't like the Bible. It confuses. When it says that God will yield to Israel's plea, it's not talking about the masses of Jews. Again, narrow is the way to life, broad is the way to destruction. We see that in Isaiah 10, where it says a remnant will return to God. Not all the Jews. It's saying to those who were true to God, those who were loyal to God in the divine order, who obey God through me, okay, who after Christ comes, the Messiah comes, this is Old Testament, it becomes Jews and Gentiles. So it says anybody from any race who obeys God through me in time and keeps all the commandments, okay, they're going to plead with God to forgive them for all the horrible things that they've done, right? Going back to that verse, what says they'll remember their sins and they'll loathe themselves, right? So some sinners are going to keep on sinners and they're not going to keep on sinning. And, you know, maybe no one obeys God through me, but the people in the spiritual realm are obeying God through me nonetheless. And they're being cleansed with that clean, that holy water. It's talking about in one of these verses here, verse 25, right? They'll be cleaned with the spiritual water of God, from the water of life, from the fountain of life, the water of life, from the Garden of Eden, the fountain of life, what have you. Okay. So there's that there. And I'm having trouble speaking. I went way over time. Let me just end it there. I just want to make sure you understand that it's not talking about all the Jews. It's not even talking about Jews. Because when Christ came 2,000 years ago in this story, he said, you know, he made it clear to them that those who obey the commands of God are the children of God. And so did Paul in Paul's letters when he said there's no Jew or Gentile. There's just those who obey God, who are one with Christ, who are the body of Christ, and those who aren't. And then there's the deeds that they do. Okay, that's why it bothers to say that Ham begot Cush, Cush begot Nimrod. Nimrod was a mighty warrior before the Lord. There was a lot of people who were loyal to God at the time. Is a logical assumption. So why did it mention Nimrod? Because you're judged by your deeds, and people are supposed to admire you based on your holy deeds, right? Your character. Like Martin Luther King said, judging people by the content of their character. And when you're a mighty warrior who's full of this intense, righteous warrior spirit, okay, attractive women, for example, are supposed to prefer you to other guys. If they don't, why not? They prefer their mere emotions. They prefer the judgment of their subcortical regions in their brain, their cortices, their frontal lobe, you know, their amygdala. They prefer the opinion of their mere human brain to principles. They prefer their mere emotions and their gray matter and their white matter in their brain failing them over the principles that tell them no matter how you feel, you must put the righteous man first. Because there's a thin line between a woman who doesn't do that and a woman that only has sex with children or animals. Okay, it's just emotion-based falsehood, and they're outside the gates.